This game was played between Bobotsov and Tal in 1958. The game begins with the Queen's Gambit, to which Tal applies the King's Indian defence, and then at this point White plays f3, and this is the Seamish variation of the King's Indian defence. It aims at a kingside attack against Black, beginning at a suitable point with the pawn advance g2 to g4. It is a sharp line and Black must defend carefully. Tal then continues castles, then we have knight g to e2, c5, bishop to e3, knight b to d7, queen to d2, a6, and then White castles queenside, and his intentions are clear. White plans a kingside attack against Black, accompanied with kingside pawn advances. Tal then plays queen to a5 and initiates counterplay on the queenside against the White king. White plays king to b1. This move overprotects the White a2 pawn. Tal then plays b5 and begins a counter-attack with pawn advances against the White castle-king position. White tries to restrain Black's attack by threatening the queen exchange. White probably expects here the move queen to d8 in this position. Note that in this position queen takes d2 is a mistake, for we then have knight takes e7 check, king to h8, rook takes d2 with strong advantage to White. However, in this position Tal does not play queen to d8 but plays knight takes d5. This is an astonishing move. Black sacrifices the queen for two minor pieces. This is a positional sacrifice of the queen played to improve Black's attack, but there is no immediate combinatory win for Black in this position. White plays queen takes a5. White decides to accept the queen sacrifice. This queen sacrifice is speculative but confers a marked positional advantage on Black. Whether this positional advantage is worth the exchange of a queen for two pieces is questionable. Tal's success in this game appears to depend on inadequate defence by White, and in the present position, after White has captured the Black queen, it is difficult to say which side has the advantage. Tal then captures the bishop on e3. White plays rook to c1, and then Tal captures the pawn on c4. Black captures the pawn and opens lines of attack against the White king. White then plays rook takes c4 and decides to sacrifice the exchange to reduce the strength of Black's attack. This does not appear immediately necessary, as neither Black nor White is completely developed. Perhaps a stronger move in this position for White is queen to c3, and White may successfully withstand Black's attack. But as we have said in this position, White plays rook takes c4, Black captures the rook, and then White plays knight to c1. White moves this knight to the defence of the White king position. Black plays rook to b8, and the Black attack gathers strength of this rook on the open file. White captures the c4 pawn and develops the bishop. Tal then plays knight to b6, and perhaps a stronger move for Black in this position is bishop takes d4, and then we could have knight to b3 followed by bishop to e5. However, in this position, as we've already said, Tal plays knight to b6. White then plays bishop to b3, and this natural seeming move is a mistake. This bishop can be displaced easily from b3 by the pawn advance c5 to c4, and White should be playing actively to counter Black's attack. In a few moves while completing the development, Black's assault on the White king becomes overwhelming. A better move for White in this position is b takes a6, and White may survive after c takes d4, bishop to d3. However, as we have said in this position, White plays bishop to b3. Tal then continues bishop takes d4. White plays queen to d2, then Black plays bishop to g7. This move is not as a retreat, but is played to allow the pawn advance c5 to c4. White plays knight to e2, then we have the pawn advance c4 as expected. White retreats the bishop to c2, and then Tal plays the pawn advance c3, and this pawn advance is decisive. In this position, white now plays queen to d3. We can examine two possibilities for white in this position, returning to the previous position. If white plays b takes c3, then black plays knight to c4 check, and white has a discovered check, winning the queen. Alternatively, in this position, white can play knight takes c3, and again black plays knight to c4. Black is threatening the white queen and the pawn on b2, and we could have the sequel: queen to c1, b takes c3, bishop b3, knight to d2, king to c2, knight takes b3, a takes b3, bishop to g7, and black has an easily won game with the rook and two pieces for the queen, as well as an attack against the white king. However, in this position, after the pawn advance c3, white plays queen to d3, as we've already said. Tal then captures on b2 with the pawn. White then plays knight to d4. White blocks the diagonal of the black bishop on g7. Black then plays bishop to d7. This bishop enters the game and threatens, amongst other moves, to play bishop to h4. It also allows the rook on f8 to move to the open file c8. In this way, all black's pieces enter the attack. White then plays rook to d1 in this position. Note that in this previous position, if white captures the b2 pawn by king takes b2, then black's attack becomes overwhelming. For example, we have the line knight to a4 check, king to a3, knight to b2, queen to c3, rook f to c8, and then if white plays queen to e3, for example, then black plays knight to c4 checkmate. So there's in this position, as we've said, white plays rook to d1. Tal then plays rook f to c8. This is the rook move already foreseen. White then plays bishop to b3 and attempts to block the line of action of the rook on b8. Tal then continues knight to a4. This defends the pawn on b2, as well as advances the knight into the king attack. White then captures on a4 and black recaptures. White plays knight to b3 and attempts to halt black's attack with this knight move. But Tal continues rook to c3. Black's attack is unstoppable. White captures the pawn on a6, and then black captures on b3. White recaptures, and then Tal plays rook b to c8. This doubling of rooks on the c-file and the threat of promotion of the b2 pawn marks the final stage of the game. White then plays queen to a3 in this position, and of course, returning to the previous position, white does not play king takes b2, because then we have the discovered check rook to c6 and black wins the white queen. So in this position, white plays queen to a3, and then Tal continues rook to c1 check, rook takes c1, rook takes c1 check, and black resigns at this point, for we then have king to a2, and the pawn promotes to a queen with checkmate.